Chapter 49. To appearance, Trans-Susquehanna is peaceful enough. Farmhouses, a schoolhouse, a road to York. At the third 10-minute segment of arc, they calculate their probable error, change direction by an RPH to the northward, and continue to their next stopping place, which once again shall take them conveniently, this time beside the great inland road between York and Baltimore, more real than any imaginary line any would run athwart it. The earth hereabouts is red, the tone of a new brick wall in the shadow, due to a high ratio of iron, and if tilled in exactly the right way, it becomes magnetized too, so that at harvest time 'tis necessary only to pass along the rows any large container of iron, and the vegetables will fly up out of the ground and stick to it. Ahead of them, in the next 10 minutes of arc, lie a dozen streams falling into Gunpowder Creek, which runs roughly parallel to the Visto and about a mile south of it. The last of these branches being close enough to another 10 minutes west. Upon crossing it, they need only calculate their error as before and aim slightly north, so as to fall in again with their proper latitude 10 minutes west of that. In such easy hops through the summer fields and the German cooking do they progress Susquehanna to the Allegheny Mountain. Some mornings they awake and can believe that they traverse an Eden, unbearably fair in the dawn, squandering all its beauty, day after day unseen, bearing them fruits, presenting them game, bringing them a fugitive moment of peace. How, for days at a time, can they not, dizzy with it, believe themselves passed permanently into dream? Summer takes hold, manifold sweet odours of the fields, and presently the forest become routine, and one night the surveyors sit in their tent in the dark and watch fireflies, millions of them blinking everywhere, Dixon engineering plans for lighting the campsite with them, recalling how his brother George back home ran coal gas through reed piping along the orchard wall. Jeremiah will lead the fireflies to stream continuously through the tent in a narrow band, here and there to gather in glass globes, concentrating their light to the yellow of a new risen moon. And when we move to where there are none of these tiny linkmen, we take 'em with us, lifetime employment. But how long do they live? Ensign cheer. As the Visto has grown longer behind them, the Philadelphia-ward fringe of the nightly encampment has lengthened to a suburbs dedicated to high, as some would say low, living, gaming, corn whiskey, women able to put up with a heap of uncompensated overtime, stages knocked together each nightfall and lanterned into view, to a murmur as of a great crowd in motion, only to be struck again each dawn, as those for whom it is cheaper to follow than to abandon the party for business elsewhere, groaning with the night just past, hoping for a chance to sleep sometime during the journey, prepare to follow the axeman through another day. The fast and loose artist, the Scots crier, the scryer, the Vasquez brothers, marimba quartet who often play backup for the torpedo, to whom it is the music of his youth, his home waters. The marimbas in great towering structure, assembled each evening just outside of camp, pulse along, chords and arpeggiations, swaying upward to their sharp diversions, then back down again, sets of hammers, hands and sleeves, all moving together along the ranked wood notes, nocturnal, energetic, remembrancing, warning, impelling. The anthem of the expedition, as it moves into the unknown, is Pepinatsos, marching and rolling, but wishing rather to dance. Pepinatsos nunca, abrezos si mi, queris si, de veros eguame, dejate los pepinatsos. All summer. The translation apparently is, blows, never hugs. If you loved me, listen to me. Leave the blows. All summer, they labour in the service of the line. Probably thumps. Thumps, never hugs. Who knows? All summer, they labour in the service of the line. Over Codorus, Coniwago, pausing to set up the sector, dodging 1.5-inch hailstones, calculating offsets, changing direction, cross Piney Run and Monocacy Road and the creeks beyond, till just past Middle Creek, figuring they are about in their latitude without bothering to set up the sector. The surveyors turn off the angle calculated to put them another 10 minutes on at the South Mountain and among all the ghosts already thick in those parts. We are fools, proposes Dixon one night. The wind has shifted at about sunset to the south-southeast, heightening even minor stresses among the company. We shouldn't be running this line. Mason regards his cup of claret. Bit late for that, isn't it? Why, aye. I'll carry it through, friend. Fear not. But something invisible's going on. Thou must feel it, smell it. Mason shrugs. American politics? Just so. We're being used again. It doesn't alarm thee. An accident of the late light has filled Mason's orbits with coloured shadows. Resign? They would bring up the letter immediately. Then Nixon nods glumly and Mason keeps on more than he has to. Though we're in this together, yet is it easier for you, being the Quaker and not expected to prove combative, than for me, who must accordingly bear double the burden of bravery? Splendid. Did they team us up together like this deliberately? Are you my penalty, precise to the groat, for enjoying a command of my own, for not having seconded masculine at the transit? Now I have to be ear-coot. Bit steep, isn't it? Mason begins fiddling with his cue, bringing it first over one shoulder, then the other. If it were all true, every unkind suspicion, every fantastical rendering, would we, knowing all, none the less go on, do what's clearly our duty? We signed an agreement. If it meant our destruction, the ancient matter of the seahorse must ever prevent us from resigning. We've no choice but to go on with it as far as we may. Then, as we've no choice, I may speak freely and share with you some of my darker sentiments. Suppose Masculine's a French spy. Suppose a secret force of Jesuits receives each day a summary of observations made at Greenwich, and transcalculates it according to a system known to the Kabbalists of the 2nd century as gematria, whereby messages may be extracted from lines of text, sacred and otherwise, a knowledge preserved by various custodians over the centuries, and since the last possessed by Jesuit and Freemason alike. The dispute over Bradley's obs then, as over Flamsteed's before him, would keep ever as their unspoken intention that the numbers nocturnally obtained be set side by side and arranged into lines like those of a text, manipulated till a message be revealed. Bit sophisticated for me. Though I don't mind a likely conspiracy, I prefer it to be formed in the interests of trade. The mystical sort you fancy is far beyond me. I'm but a simple son of the pit. Trade! Aha! You heard me mention Jesuits, so now you're making veiled allusions to the East India Company in response. I do see, yes. Drivel, of course. Come, sir, can you not sense here, there, just around the corner, the pattering feet and swift hands of John Company, the lanterns of the East, the scent of fresh coriander, the whisper of a sarong? Sorry, corrects Mason. Not at all, sir. 'Twas I who was sarong. Since the party crossed Susquehanna, Armand has been marinating in melancholy, owing to Louise's departure. Even Dixon had seen it coming. Frenchy and Mrs. Redzinger, they're scarcely together of late, did thou notice? As they draw nearer the Redzinger farm, the presence of Peter Redzinger becomes quite sensible to all. Indeed, he's been back since the winter. He and the boys have been working the place, lumbering about insomniac, eating whenever they happen to remember, tracking soil everywhere, hardly speaking. To Louise he seems chastened, even at times dejected, yet innocent of all suspicion as respects his wife, having long travelled past the conjugal emotions, belonging to the simple fact of another hard Pennsylvania winter, the lowness and solidity of sky, no day without its distress, roads that end in thickets at nightfall. Christ went away. He discovers at last how to tell her one morning, the eaves adrip, the blary sun irregularly brighter and dimmer. One day, for no reason that I could see, Christ came to me and said, Peter, I am going away. You thought it was hard before this. Here is where it gets impossible. Are you coming back? I almost couldn't speak. You must live ever in that expectation. Come, spare me that face. Of course it is a lot to ask. He seemed in a dangerously merry state. Was it relief at being shut of me at last? How do I proceed without you? What have I been teaching you all this time? I was smit dumb, Louise. I didn't understand the question. Be more like you? I tried. He'd been teaching me all this time? Where? Alas! His smile, at least, was not a pitying one, nor was it quite as disappointed as I'd feared. He turned. For the first time I saw the back of his robe. He had a motto in German embroidered fine as could be in the gold threads upon the back. I couldn't read what it said. He receded. He was gone. Peter! I feel cold, helpless without him. Ah! I believed I could count upon him forever. He was there. He was real. Then he turned and went away. I have displeased him. But how? I loved him. All day, half the night, on he talks, stunned and sing-song. He does not weep as much as Louisa expects. Armand has a swift look in from time to time, smiles understandingly, heaves a sigh, withdraws. Louisa waits to grow impatient. She considers the Frenchman for the first time with unrestrained desire, having glimpsed the possibility that they may never have a chance to address it. She can also appreciate how tiresome this listening to Peter is. Yet from some unexplored region to her spirit's west, like upland folk with goods to sell, come messengers with the late news that her destiny, spite all, may lie with this crazed, Christless wreck of a husband, or, as she will find, also herself asking in tears upon any number of future occasions, what else was I supposed to do? What? That Frenchman and his duck? I actually tried for a while to tell Peter about our little trio, but I couldn't even do that, for he never heard me. He was too full of old adventures, out past Monongahela, with Christ, going about in various disguises, Christ and his hop-field companion Peter upon missions of education. Christ and Peter visit the Indians. Christ reminisces about his teen years. Christ teaches Peter how to make golems. Excuse me, Louisa, your husband? He makes golems. Oh, not the big ones, Lottie. No, kitchen size. Some of them quite clever. The tasks they do. One that peels and cores apples. Yeah, even pits cherries. Louisa, for shame. The women beam together mischievously. One day, however, Louisa will show her. Peter will not mind. Pennsylvania is a place of spiritual wonders, amazing as any chasm or cataract. Among the German farmers of Lancaster, for example, are scores, perhaps hundreds, of truly, literally good people, escaped from a hell we in our small, tendered quotidian may but try to imagine. Entire villages put to flame, and tortures worse than inquisitorial, disembowelments, bloodlettings, a world without innocence, yet escaped here, into innocence reborn. Something deeper and more intricate. They call it a new life in Christ. It is their way of explaining it. Not a moment of their waking day passes without some form of Christian devotion. Work, which the rest of us at one time or another have cursed and wished at an end, is here considered sacred. And this is only one of many wonders. Never has traveller encountered such personal variety where utter cleanness and sobriety may be seen immediately adjoining the most stupefied exhibitions of hemp-field folly. There are Germanical mystics who live in trees, not up in the branches, but actually within the trunks, those particularly of ancient creekside sycamores, which have, over time, become hollowed out like caverns. In the midst of these lightless woods are gunsmithies, where the most advanced and refined forms of art are daily exercised upon the machinery of murder by craftsmen whose piety is unquestioned. Wick's Cherry Coke, Spiritual Daybook. Depew recalls a sermon he once heard at a church full of German mystics. It might have been a lecture in mathematics. Hell beneath our feet, bounded. Heaven above our pates, unbounded. Hell a collapsing sphere, heaven an expanding one. The enclosure of punishment, the release of salvation. Sin leading us as naturally to hell and compression, as doth grace to heaven and rarefaction. Thus, murmurs of thus, may each point of heaven be mapped or projected upon each point of hell, and vice versa, and what intercepts the projection about midway reckoned logarithmically between? Why, this very earth, and our lives here upon it. We only think we occupy a solid brick and timber city. In reality, we live upon a map. Perhaps even our lives are but representations of truer lives, pursued above and below, as to Philadelphia correspond both a vast heavenly city and a crowded niche of hell, each element of one faithfully mirrored in the others. There are a Mason and Dixon in hell, you mean? Inquires Athelma, attempting eternally to draw a perfect arc of considerably lesser circle. Impossible, ventures the Reverend. For is hell, by this scheme, not a point without dimension? Indeed, yet suppose hell to be almost a point, argues the doughty Depew, already wrangler material. They would then be inscribing their line eternal upon the inner surface of the smallest possible spheroid that can be imagined, and then some. More of these, Athelma pretending to struggle for a modifier that will not offend the company. Curious infinitesimals, cousin? The masters at my purgatory are bewitched by the confounded things. Epsilons, usually, miserable little squiggling in the air sort of things, eh? See them often, sighs Depew. This session more than ever. What puzzles me, Depew, is that if the volume of hell may be taken as small as you like, yet the souls therein must be even smaller. Mustn't they? There being by now easily millions down there. Aye, assuming one of the terms of damnation to be to keep just enough of one's size and weight to feel oppressively crowded, taking as a model the old black hole of Calcutta, if you like. The soul's volume must be an epsilon 1 degree smaller, a sub-epsilon. The epsilonics of damnation. Well, well, there's my next sermon, remarks Uncle Wicks. I observe, Tenebrae, transformed by the pale taper light to some beautiful needlewoman in an old painting, of both of you, that your fascination with hell is matched only by your disregard of heaven. Why should the surveyors not be found there, above? Gesturing with her needle, a curve ensemble of embroidery floss, of a nearly invisible grey trailing after, in the currents raised by talking pacing, fanning, approaching, withdrawing, and whatever else there'd be to indoor life. Drifting about, chaining the endless airy leagues, themselves approaching a condition of pure geometry. Though for symmetry's sake, interposes Depew, we ought to say almost endless. Why? Whispers Bray. Whoever said anything had to be symmetrical? The lads, puzzled, exchange a quick look. End of chapter.